Hello, everybody, and welcome to this fifth edition of the Lean Stream. I'm Gabriela Maca, and I'm very excited to be your host for today. The Lean Stream is the Lean companies look into the latest trends in marketing, advertising, innovation, and e-commerce. In this particular session, we are looking at the new technologies shaping the world of online retail and the strategies that brands and retailers can deploy to stay ahead in the constantly shifting retail landscape. We have amazing speakers today, and in the hour, we should be able to cover quite a lot of ground from a number of different angles. So remember, if you'd like to ask a question to any of our speakers today, you can do so by hitting the Q&A button on your Zoom screen. We will try to answer any good questions as we go along. So before we get kicked off, let's start with a quick poll. You should see a poll coming up on your screens now, so please do vote using the voting function. So the poll is, as a consumer, which of the following best describes your experience of retail shopping in the year 2022? So without further ado, we have our opening panel. We have a representative from a 150-year-old global FMCG and an emerging technology platform based out of Thailand. Could you each please introduce yourself for our audience? Renee, would you like to start?
Hi, everyone, of course. So first, let me say thank you to Mark and to Gabby as well. I'm pretty thrilled being here because it's quite a long time, or it's quite happened, yeah, not so often being in a panel in the previous month. My name is René Walker. I'm the head of e-commerce for Central Europe for Johnson & Johnson, and I'm with e-commerce since, professionally, since more than 8 years.
Thank you very much for that. Pim Sai.
Hi, my name is Pim Sai. I'm a Chief Commercial Officer at Hotplay. So Hotplay, we base out of Bangkok. And what we do is an in-game marketing solution where we bridge advertiser to players on our in-game advertising platform.
Great. Thank you for that. So we were supposed to have a third speaker, Paul Rogers, as well from Vermont, but unfortunately, he cannot make it due to a last-minute emergency. So Pim Sai and Renee, thank you for introducing yourselves. We have quite a global lineup as we are all in different parts of the world, but I think that's the beauty and convenience of webinars. So let's go ahead and start with the questions. Starting with Renee, it would be great to hear from you some of the strategies that you've put in place to deal with the pandemic from an online retail perspective. Which in particular would you say were successful?
Great question, because I mean, now we already could reflect on what happened and what went good and what went, let's say, not so good. But so back in the day, so let's say end 2019, beginning 2020, I was working for Henkel still, so also FMCGs, but with a huge focus on adhesives and DIY. And when the lockdown, the crisis started, for us, the most important thing was having sufficient stock. And we saw that after, maybe it was already after March, when the first big lockdown period hit us, that we could basically shut down marketing and promos, because the most important thing was being available to, I mean, you could just beat competition by being available when they were not available. So that was probably the biggest advantage or the biggest strategy or part of the strategy. And we managed, for example, with stocking our retailers, of course also stocking Amazon, but also our 3P retailers, and to guarantee we are not out of stock.
Okay, that's great. So for Pim Sai, can you give an example of a brand that you saw or worked with during the pandemic that thrived?
Yeah, well, I think, clearly when we were in the pandemic, we, the only channel that we shop and entertain ourselves is e-commerce, online shopping, right? So in Asia here, we see people buying from grocery, fashion, home improvement products, or even cars from e-commerce online, right? And so I've seen number of brand and retailers here that start using games in that approach to engage and entertain the audience. And this, of course, the aim is kind of like outside of mind. They want to be present in the mind of their audience all the time. And I think those successful ones managed to capture their audience attention, and they increased time spent on the platform, as well as the double and triple number of visits on their platform. And the question is, how many of those convert to the sales volume? Yeah, so that's another story. But I can see that games, they've been effective tools for brand to engage.
I think during the pandemic as well, right, everyone also had the time to engage in gaming more, since everyone was at home. So I think that's what also helped it. So let's go on to question number 2. Part of the rationale for this webinar is to explain to brands and retailers how to choose the right mix of online platforms, channels, or even technologies. Can you talk us through any new emerging technologies that you have seen that have really impressed or excited you? Sai, would you like to start?
Sure. So when we look at technology or channel that enable brand to reach the target audience, right? So so I think like you said, Gabriel, that during the pandemic and now the behavior people change, and we spend more and more time online, and part of the entertainment, daily entertainment is game, right? I'm not going to talking about games all the time, but I just want to share that it's been proven with the situation, the circumstance, that is quite effective to reach out the target audience. But the challenge still there, because different people have a different preference in terms of game genre, the type of character, gameplay, and story that they like to engage, right? So I think the main idea of using something like this is to have fun and get people to participate. So some of the platform or technology solution that I see is like mini games that can embed that into other online e-commerce app, or even telco self-care application. And then they have like a sponsor quest with this with the mini game, simple gameplay, and they add the social element that you can compete and you can share your score. You can do like a viral of your gameplay. So these are the things that I find quite creative and catchy.
Well, it's very interesting. I've never really, really learned so much about in-game advertising. So hearing it from your perspective is, quite interesting for me as well. So Renee, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
So, I mean, there's probably always the greatest comparison to compare, say, the so-called Western world, or say the old countries, towards what's happening in APAC. Because especially when it comes to like digitization or e-commercialization of retail, I feel we are like way behind, especially when it comes to like consumer engagement or how available you are. And what thrilled me most of this is, I don't want to say the pandemic situation had a good side, but probably it helped or it boosted digitization of retail, especially in the Western countries. So what we saw like already, I don't want to say a decade ago in APAC, for example, live shopping, D2C, dropship, quick commerce. So all those stuff happened during the pandemic. Maybe also because money was cheap and available. So there was a lot of venture capital floating those companies. So we had a great cash burn allowance. But it was also for the big companies, and especially in the old countries, that finally we were allowed to test and learn things that I would bet we would have not been able to test 5 years ago. So in that point of view, it was a good environment to improve customer centricity when it came to omni-channel experiences. Yeah, like I mentioned, quick commerce, live shopping, D2C.
So obviously, right, we are seeing across Europe and across the world, as both of you have mentioned, the result of the pandemic, even the war in Ukraine, central bank money printing, a cost of living crisis. And I think both of you have already mentioned some of the trends that have been arising from all of these problems. But what specific trends do you think or have you noticed with, let's say, for Renee, the European consumer, and what have you been doing to actually adapt to this?
Who first? Pimsay, me?
Renee,
sorry.
go ahead.
I can go. So, I mean, what trend stayed more? So, from my point of view, and that resonates with what I said before, consumers have become more powerful, probably. So, I mean, there was so much advertising spent in the market, and consumers on the other hand side, they're becoming more conscious to what they see, to what they buy, and probably that also gets back to like transparency and information available. But in the very end, what we see is consumers are very, very precise, or are getting more precise in what they buy, especially when it comes to, is it made local, is it sustainable, what ingredients are we talking about, is the packaging made out of plastic or paper or whatever. So in one sentence, consumers have become more conscious and more powerful.
Okay.
I totally agree with that. I mean, here too, in Asia, we see that the consumer, they are more and more conscious, especially with the younger generation, right? So they be more, how to say, selective in terms of the product, of the brand that they choose, and they want to be engaged as well, right? So we can see that the younger generation want to be more engaged and more present with their choice, while the older generation, they're looking at value offering, like
Price.
When price point, and then it's not only the price alone, but they feel that the attention and they engagement, participation with the brand should be rewarded in terms of the loyalty programs, or even like voucher or cashback form of discount, something that they feel like brand really take care of them, and this is a of value offering.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I feel like the younger generation goes for like more Instagrammable packaging, like, how influencers try to make videos out of it. And then you go for the older generation who's more about practicality. So I feel like a lot of businesses look into that as well, depending on what their target consumer is.
Yeah.
So here's another one. Can you talk us through an epic fail that you have seen in terms of a rollout of a new e-commerce platform or website? What went wrong? What advice would you give to companies that are trying to bounce back from that? Renee, would you like to start on this?
Yeah, I mean, probably I'm always good in sharing things that went wrong. I was first thinking about what did I do wrong particularly. For example, I once forgot to remove pictures in the background when I was doing a live stream. So there was a focus issue. But when I think about what did we do wrong, or what companies are doing wrong, I particularly think of product channel fit. So we always talk about product market fit, but sometimes we also miss product channel fit. And I usually love the Coke example. So that, just imagine wherever you go, Coke looks different. For example, when you go to, for example, McDonald's, a supermarket, a fancy restaurant, or a club, the way your Coke is being delivered to that place is always different, just because Coke has to ensure a good product channel fit, especially from a transportation perspective. And I mean, especially the big companies, sometimes we just have, let's say, offline products, and then we just take a hammer and a nail, and we make it e-commerce. So we throw money on it to make it convert, like Pimsay said. And we need to spend more time to ensure product channel fit. For example, at Henkel, we had a great example of detergents. Detergents, they contain a lot of water because, I mean, on the shelf, they need to look big, because big sells. But for e-commerce, it's a complete waste of space and money and capacity when you ship around water. And in this case, Amazon and Walmart asked us to create concentrates, especially for a North American market, to make them more e-commerce ready and to make them channel fit.
Okay. Pimsay?
I think on my side is very much about the marketing and advertising that drive the engagement, between brand and audience, right? So at Hotplay, we monitor actively on how brands and retail adopt games in their advertising strategy. And we found that there's still lack of understanding of how they can build a presence within the games, right? So I understand that, when it comes to like e-commerce and physical store, how you present the product is very important. And in the game as well, how you create the perception of your product online or the attribute that you want to stick in your audience mind is all about, crafting the experience, right? And the past year, especially in Asia, that we see brands use a game as part of their tool to engage and promote. They're focusing on the wrong things. Like e-commerce platform, for example, they just bombard their audience with magnitude of games, like hyper casual games, 20, 30 games, because they feel like, oh, this is, all you can eat, you can come and play. And this is kind of like freebies for the e-commerce audience, and they can come and spend time on the platform. But actually, I think the part that they should focus is more on the user journey, on the gamification layer on top, how they're going to get the audience, have the good experience. And of course, at the end, there's still e-commerce platform. They need to get the audience touch point with the brands and the product that they promote, in a nice way, in a positive association, not like disrupting with the pop-up ad all the time, right? So these are the things that are sometimes not easy, and you have a different flavor across the demography, age group, and so on. The last point I want to say is an art, right? To crafting the experience, and it's fun, and I'm sure that this is something that brand and e-commerce should try, because they along the way they will get to understand the audience better.
So in relation to that, we have a question from the audience. Pimsai, could you tell us more about social selling using games?
Okay. I think it can be in the different format. So as Renee mentioned that, in emerging market like Southeast Asia, we have a big population of digital native, right? So they're born with a, iPad on the hand, and, they're already in the metaverse.
And we don't even have a 4G Wi-Fi in our big capitals. So that's a difference.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah. So Gabriel, can you remind me the term again? Social
selling using games.
Social selling. Okay, using games. Yeah. So we're seeing that you can use a format of like a sponsor quest to promote the product, and at the end of the quest that you complete, you get the voucher or coupon discount and try the product. And usually it comes with the viral, with the social campaigns. So there is a community manager where promoting this to the brand audience, and you refer it to your friend, you get more points or value, right? So this can be one way of a social selling. Or another thing that we've seen is like sort of a tournament. So you have exclusive event or prize that only in Asia, I'm sorry, it's very popular about 11/11. So this month is 7, which is July. So on the 7th of July is 7/7. So I'm sure that there are going to be another campaign where game e-commerce tournament that you can participate, and at the end you will get some goodies or prize from sponsors. So this is the way we see like the social selling, the way they engage through games and lead to the sales conversion.
Okay, So moving on to the future, we're hearing more and more about cryptos, NFTs, and the metaverse. It would be great to get your perspectives on how both of you see these new and to an extent untried channels developing with regards to marketing and online retail. Renee?
I think that perfectly relates to the question of one of the visitors of how do we cope with people turning to value or turning away from value brands when their budget is stretched. Because I mean, what are we talking about when we talk about like NFTs, metaverse? Basically, just what Pimsa said. It's you are, or we as brands, we have to be there, or we have to be where consumers are, and we have to be, and we as brands, we have to give the same kind of security, support, and consciousness. So we need to be the same solution as we have been like in the 60s or 80s, where, for example, let's say, where, for example, Volkswagen was the definition of a car. So just to give an example, and if you want to also be the definition of the people's car in the future, then you need to be where your future customers are. But you need to come across with the same authentic messages and with the same reliability in what you and your brand stand for. And when we think about people's stretched budget, yes, I mean, we see it everywhere that people are more likely to turn away from brands and to go to, for example, white label products if a brand does not have a proper value proposition. So, I mean, some brands, they're just a name for themselves, and they don't need to explain their value proposition. So people are not very likely to turn away. But as the more your brand is getting or your product is getting comparable, the more likely people are to turn away from your brand or from your product. So my advice would be highlight your benefits or create new ones, or be the brand with the most benefits when it comes to that particular solution, no matter what brand or what market or what consumer need or demand we're talking about.
Pinsai?
I think when talking about Web3, right, as a technology, and so when we say Web3 is very much about everything around blockchain, crypto, NFT, metaverse, right? So I'm sure these will disrupt the way we interact socially online between each other, and also with the brand, and the way people perceive certain things, right? Either the experience of learning, the experience of trying new things, of seeing new products, and so on. So the way I see token, NFT, these can be used as the marketing tools to build and grow the communities. Like, for example, it doesn't mean that every brand have to have their own tokens. I'm not saying that, but it's more like they can have the digital version of the products, right? Even though it's a detergent, but when it comes to metaverse, it can be the animation or the character that represent, as Renee said, the benefit and attribute the value, unique selling point of the brand, but you transform it into a digital representation of the brand, right? Or like fashion. This is an easy example. You can people have their digital identity. So this can be physical and virtual, like NFT wearable that we've seen many of a good examples. Yeah, so I really think that with the technology and the way we evolve, we cannot deny, and brand cannot just say like, no, we are very traditional. This is our core strong audience, because brand have to evolve with the consumer as well.
So I guess in line with that, another question is, what one trend do you think will dominate in 2023? I mean, given that, with the metaverse coming up and then everyone shifting to digital, like what's one specific trend that you think will, continue to stay ahead in the market? Pimsai?
Okay. I think, yeah, as we all agree and aware that we spend more and more time online, right? And yeah, and a lot, I mean, almost everybody play games one way or another. So I think the trend is game. This is a stepping stone of getting into the metaverse, right? And the way we get information, the way we exchange has changed to previously. You only have close group of friends, and then we have a social media. We have like a broader community where we can exchange news of the product, recommendation, and so on. And I think in the metaverse that would be like the virtual and community. And I think as a stepping stone, when I said games, this is kind of like games. When you look at it today, it's not like a flat 2D drawing games. It's like a real 3D games. Even though hyper casual, you have like a high nice design graphic, and I think these are the assets that you can use creatively to engage and represent something. So I think this is going to be a trend, and more and more brands and advertiser will look into it.
Okay. Renee?
I mean, 2023 is, let's say, just around the corner. So I don't think that things are about to change so rapidly and so massively. So I'm pretty sure that the situation we see these days will last for, let's say, at least the next 2, 3, probably 5 years. So less money printing, inflation going up, interest going up. So say we are going back to, I don't want to say to a situation we had in the 1990s, which means that consumers will be even more conscious about what's happening, and there will be probably less test and learn so meaning we and the retail, we just need to be even more precise to have this close connection to our end consumers. So therefore, for me, the two big trends will be, I mean, I already said it, will be sustainability, also from the market or channel fit proposition. And on the other hand side, especially for, let's say, for the region I'm working and living in, so Central Europe, it will be omni-channel. Because I mean, especially in Germany, we have the most, I mean, as long as I'm not wrong, we have the most retailers per capita and per square kilometers, which is a big chance for omnichannel, because we could create the perfect connection between online sales, retail, brick and click, pickup services, home delivery, lockers, whatever. So there will be a huge, or let's say, demand will be closer to supply within the next 2 and 3 years, even more.
Okay, so I guess in line with that, what advice would you give to companies that want to adapt digitally, that are currently struggling and adapting? Renee, would you like to start?
You mean adapting to, let's say, the new digital world we're supposed to live in?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't want to say that I am, or that we are old-fashioned. Let's say me, then I'm talking about my age, like in the early 30s. But we need to fix a lot of companies need to fix the basics first, because I see a lot of companies just rushing into metaverse, also into e-commerce, yeah. So always fix basics first. It's starting with data. It's starting with content. It's starting with, again, product channel fit. So yeah, ensure product channel fit, ensure data accuracy, and then start to think from a consumer's point of view. what do I accept my brand to be? Where do I expect it to be? And then, I mean, just act accordingly, and then start up building your brand also, let's say, on the internet or in the digital world.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Pimsai?
Yeah, I think I agree that the fundamental has to be well thought through, right? But again, it's no harm to try to test like even with a small scale to see with the different pocket of your audience or consumers, right? And you start to educate yourself, collecting data, understand their preference, how they learn and how they interact, and how to say, be creative, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the technology is there. It's just the design of how you're going to use the technology to communicate and answer to the need of your audience, and then at the end it will convert to the sales and to the loyalty of your customers.
Absolutely, and I mean, probably that also came up during the pandemic, especially, or it boosted that. I feel that it has never been so easy and so, I don't want to say cheap, but probably it is, to start new test and learns, to have a small pilot. There are so many agency or other support functions or freelancers out there that can help you to, or support you with skills that you don't have yet, and then you can just do a very fast small scale test and learn. If it's positive, scale it up, throw money on it, make it big, and if it doesn't, fail forward, learn, and just go on to the next thing you might feel will attract your consumers. Absolutely.
And I'm very glad that Renee mentioned that, because at the end it's about sharing the knowledge and skill sharing, right? Startup small company like us want to work with a big and global brand so that we can learn from your perspective as well, and then we can help in terms of technology, in terms of a new idea. Yeah, I think it's kind of like a benefit and win-win situation, and the ecosystem industry are more, how to say, collaborative than ever, right? So yeah, so I think that can be something to think about.
Absolutely.
So in regards to that, can both of you sum up the future of online retail in 3 words?
I have to let Renee go first. My note, I think I thought about the words, but I'm not sure I have 3.
3, then I pick integrated omnichannel, because it means everything. Integrated omnichannel.
Okay. Pimsai?
So kind of like mine is an individual, like each word. So I think the first one is about community. Even like when we say community, we often think about the social group online, or guild in the game, or the community in Discord. But actually, brands, every brand has their own community. I think you need to reach out and manage your community, right? The word, I think it has to be fun and entertaining, because with the world we're facing with so many challenging, we need to add fun into the marketing. It's supposed to be positive, right? And the last word, I'm thinking about rewarding, because people feel like my attention is of value. I should be rewarded for my attention and participation with you, something like that.
So that you feel the brands loves you.
Yeah, in a way. Or the brand here.
Well, all right. So that brings us to the end of the question and answer part. Once again, thank you for being with us today. As we are all in different time zones, I know you also have hectic schedules, so thank you for making time for this webinar.
Thank you.
I mean, we got some new questions in, I see.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Would you like to answer? Really?
I got to read them first and then sing in silence.
All right.
Somehow I don't see the question, but maybe we can pick one or two if we
I
still
take the
have.
first one. So from Tamarine, which industries are expected to grow massively in 2023? For a new e-commerce store, what do you think is essential to survive in the initial stage? I just pick up my glass bubble. So, I mean, which companies are expected to grow massively? So, like I said, if you have a brand that has or that gives unique value, a sustainable proposition. I mean, we see a lot of people looking for safety and security right now. We see people, especially for example, in Germany, craving for energy savings. So those will be the companies I would buy a long position. What do you think? What do you think is essential to survive on the initial stage? I would expect a huge cash burn rate. So therefore, I would say you need quite some cash to survive, because especially in the very first time, you need a lot of money to do advertising, to do test and learns, to see who is your high value audience, whom you can sell to, what's your cost of conversion. And on the other side, I mean, you need stock, because if you don't have stock, all the knowledge and all the money will not help you to survive, because then you know whom to sell or whom to sell to, how to sell to, but you have nothing to turn into sales. So stock is the last thing I would mention.
Okay. Pimsai, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think from from Asia perspective, the way we see brands, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create like many brands. I would say many brands trying to create like hype, make sure that they always in the mind of their customers. And there's so many ways to do it, right? I think Asia here, one of very popular and tend to be effective is to use influencer, to talk about brands or live stream about brands. But sometimes I doubt it whether how sustained is going to be, because then you need to have different influencer, because the life cycle sometimes is quite short, right? Yeah, so if I were to say, I'm not the expert on that end, but I think I put a lot of value in building the community and the people that understand the value of the brand. And as we said early on, that younger generation, they're more cautious about environment, about the value, supply chain, and so on. So I think brand have to look deeper than just the superficial layer of getting the marketing hype.
Okay. So we have another question related to this actually. So in terms of customer acquisition costs, what % do you advise that businesses spend on acquiring new customers versus existing customers? Pimsai, maybe you'd like to share in the sincere and the in-game advertising.
Yeah, I think okay, let me rephrase that. For this question, I think it's more on the products or brands or e-commerce rather than the game as a product, right? Because for the game as a product, user acquisition is substantial. It's almost everything, and then the second thing is user retention. So if I looking at brand, I think you need to know who are your high value customers. If your existing customers are high value customers, you should put focus on them. And of course, you have to continue reach out to new customers, but the high value can advocate for your products too, right? So I think that can be something of value.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that. Renee, I think there's a question that came in relation to your previous answer. So for retail companies who are new to e-commerce, how long do you think you should spend in the starting phase, like where you can gauge if you're doing something effective or not?
I mean, it always, so you whether compare yourself with your peer groups or with the existing portfolio you are already selling. And I mean, I don't want to consider something to be a starting phase or an end phase just by the, let's say, just on a time scale. I would always look at it so from a brand contribution perspective. So how much money do you need to throw on people to make how a certain percentage convert buying a certain basket size? And as long as, let's say, the brand contribution level is still positive and growing, and the consumer base buying your brands is growing, I would still invest more. So I would not think in it on a time scale, but more on a brand contribution phase.
All right. Okay, I think that's the end of the questions. Yeah. Well, thank you once again, Renee and Pimsai, for joining us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the time.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be
Bye-bye.
launching a second poll for the audience. Okay.
All right. Yeah, so we're looking at the poll.
Yeah. So for the second poll, how likely are you to buy a high-ticket product, such as a computer or a car, without ever actually having seen the physical item? So I'll give you a bit more time to share your answers. All right, so now it's time for our fireside feature, where our managing director is talking to Mark Lister, who is the CCO of OnBuy.com, the UK's third largest online marketplace.
Hi there, I'm Mark Hudson from TLC, and I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Lister, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of OnBuy.com. OnBuy.com is the UK's third largest general online marketplace, and they've seen staggering growth in the past couple of years. In fact, it's tipped to be one of the UK's next tech unicorns. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. We've got people tuning in from all over the world for this webinar. So do you think you could do a little introduction to OnBuy.com for our international audience?
Yeah, sure. OnBuy is essentially an online marketplace. It was established and founded in November 2016. So this year, we're just going to be only 6 years old. So we're still quite a newcomer in the market. But as you just pointed out, we've actually seen some staggering growth over the past 2 or 3 years. And, you know, quite frankly, some of that was due to the pandemic. You know, it was kind to us, as it was to many e-commerce websites, but it actually meant that we could really position ourselves in the market, grab that growth. And the fortuitous piece is that we've actually come out the other side with that growth maintained, and we're continuing to build on that. That growth has been recognized this year with the FTSE 1000 top European companies. So that was quite the accolade. We were very proud to be in that list.
Where did you come in that list, if I can ask?
That's a very good question. I think it was about 300 and something, early 300s.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's some big names in there as well, some that are more widely known as well across Europe. So that was quite the accolade for us. We've actually won quite a few awards, but that was one of the standout ones for us. But through that time, we've witnessed crazy growth, not just in terms of the sales, but in terms of onboarding new customers, the sellers,
right?
Through the growth of our team. You know, back in 2019 actually, we had just 17 people, and now we're at 140. You know, that's a real, it's a real growth story.
That's incredible.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where you've got to meet the need, right? And I think, you know, we'll probably discuss it some, you know, later on, perhaps, about some of the challenges that you meet. You know, when you've got that type of growth, you've got to be able to resource, you know, and fund that growth, and that means talent, bringing on the great people to make it happen. But yeah, so the marketplace ourselves, what we wanted to do, well, Kaz Payton is the founder back in 2016, and what he wanted to do was ensure that we had a marketplace in the truest sense. And that is basically, we bring the buyer and the seller together and hopefully create a great environment for them to succeed on what they want to. So i.e. the buyer finds what they're looking for at a good price, and it meets their needs. On the sales side, the merchant side, they get to sell stuff. They get to sell what they want to sell. And that's what we're here to provide. We're not a marketplace that is retailing ourselves. We are creating that sort of dating site, as it were, to bring those two parties together and be successful, hopefully in a successful manner. Whilst at the moment as well, we are a UK-based marketplace. That's more on the consumer side, but we do have many of our sellers, our merchants, that are actually from China, from the US, from mainland Europe, who are wanting to tap into the UK consumer, because it's obviously what I think still about either the third or fourth largest e-commerce market in the world, just behind the US and China. And I don't know if Germany's winning at the moment or it's us. We're either third or fourth with Germany. So there's a lot of outside UK desire to feed into that market. So we have a lot of CBT, cross-border trade. Yeah. So in essence, that's the business that we've built. And as I say, the last 2.5 years has been phenomenal in terms of growth. We're now up to around about 12,000 sellers, and we have around about 6 million buyers coming to the site every month. So it's quite the vibrant marketplace.
6 million.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, that's good, because we do have people tuning in from all over the world who work for large and small brands. So this might be a good opportunity if any of them want to get in touch and they want to sell into the UK market. We can put them in touch with you later.
Yeah,
cool.
More than
happy
to have a conversation.
Great. So I mean, I've been talking to your team a lot, and one thing I think you're really keen to talk about is how you differentiate yourself from other online marketplaces, and I think this is an important selling point for you guys. So I mean, the word we're maybe not always too keen to mention, it's not always the most welcome word, but Amazon. How do you differentiate yourself from, say, an Amazon?
Yeah, I think it's probably good to point out that we don't necessarily see Amazon as the true competition. They are there. They are obviously a huge player in the marketplace, and it's going to take us quite a few years before we get anywhere near being able to topple someone, if ever, the size of Amazon. But I think the differentiator is what I was talking about earlier, which is trying to provide that fair marketplace, that transparent marketplace. Our charging fees are very simple. Our technology, certainly the experience we try and keep simple. Obviously, there's a lot of complexity behind the scenes that is needed to power such a marketplace. But the idea is that we want to create this environment that comes across as quite simple for the user, so they know what they can do. They come in, very simple. I come on, look for what I'm looking for, and I go straight through to it. Our algorithms that we actually provide on the site to surface the goods are based on the best price, best delivery, and the trust factor. Our sellers hopefully have built some good reviews with our users. There aren't any other shenanigans behind the scenes sort of working to sort of say, hey, this one we want to push or anything like that. So it's very simple algorithms that are delivering on what the buyer's looking for, and hopefully then delivering them the right and the best value products on our site. And so just coming back to that point of, we're not there to compete with our sellers. We're there actually to make them success. Our success is actually built off of their success. We're not utilizing any data to build ourselves, our ability to market to our consumers. The data we have is just to help our sellers be more aware of what's good and what's in demand on the site.
And not, dare I say it, drive small retailers out of business.
We want to create small retailers into business. It's
yeah, exactly. Brilliant. So you're the good guys. So all right, can you give us some perhaps specific example? You talked about your incredible growth from which was born out of the pandemic, but can you give us a specific example of a brand or a retailer that you helped at that time, maybe one that wasn't doing much online yet? Can you give a specific example of someone you really helped out in that way?
Well, I think helped out is probably the wrong way of looking at it. I think it's partnered with and how we supported them in their goals. But one that does stick to mind is Swan, the electronics, the household electronics company. They've actually been a long time partner of ours since 2019. And it's a very traditional brand. I think they've been around since 1920. And it's what they really wanted to try to do is they since about 2017, they've begun to start branching out on their designs with contemporary as well as the traditional and so on and so forth. So I think what they were looking for is to really embrace online to deliver new audiences to them. And so they got in contact with us and we started working with them back in 2019. And we've managed to really establish a massive presence on our site. And we did that working with them on PR, both on-site and off-site marketing to help drive that association and really open up the audiences that we had on the site. As I say, we are now selling somewhere in the region, nearly 1,000 items a month for Swan. And their growth from 2020 to 2021 was over a double in terms of the sales that they had on the site. And we worked quite closely with them on potential offers and doing point of sale promotions, and so that's quite a success story that we've had with them. And as I say, what they were looking for was to broaden their customer base and increase their sales online, and we really helped them to deliver against that goal.
All right, so that can kind of feed into my my next question is. What trends did you notice from consumers throughout the pandemic, and what did you learn from consumer behavior? That I'm sure everyone wants to hear about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting time because you normally only see that sort of behavior, the situational behavior around certain sweet spots in the year. Obviously there's situational behavior around Christmas and so on and so forth, but all of a sudden we had this, not in our lifetime, certainly not in e-commerce market, this brand new situational behavior that people just found themselves in, and everybody had to adapt to it extremely quickly. And what we probably saw before the pandemic was the majority of online sales were those personal purchases, the electronics and certain things for you as an individual.
Right.
But what we really saw was an enormous sort of move to a much more diverse cross-section, and certainly our home and garden and pet section grew to be our biggest category by twofold. So it was twice the nearest category on site. Now the situational behavior there is you're in lockdown, you start thinking of what's important to you, and what was important to everybody, I think clearly through that period, was the environment around them. And rather than those sort of superfluous items they may want to go out and so on and so forth, it was really what was around them. And so we saw people, a lot of home improvements, barbecues, rattan furniture, paddling pools, kitchenware, lots of baking going on. We saw a hell of a lot of that. Yeah, no, it was an enormous lift. Clearly people were bored and it's like, right, what can I do? So we saw this huge lift in kitchenware, very much so around the baking side of things as well. And obviously a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, went out and purchased pets during that time. So we saw this big lift in our pet section as well. So, it was very much a shift to that side of things. So the behavior was more about the environment that was around you, the importance of the play of what was important to people sort of shifted a little bit. What was great for us is that trend has persisted, because that's a great category, right? It's very, it's a big category, and the behavior has persisted. People still seem to be very much aware of the importance of their house, their home.
Yeah.
And so that home garden and pets has actually maintained a very significant part of our business as we move out of the pandemic. But I think one of the things was what was good for OnBuy was our sort of personal touch that we provide, because when the pandemic came, there were some merchants that were already online. They had their fulfillment, they were all sorted, and they were sort of in that zone. But there was many that had to scramble, to get themselves ready to be able to address that new demand. And so we're being flexible. We could work with merchants who may be in very different sort of evolutions of their online capabilities. And so we had a team, and this is one of the growing pains that we had, meeting those challenges. We had to really quickly increase the size of our customer service success team. And that was enabling people, not necessarily if they have the channel partners where they have the ability to tap in and feed through APIs into the website, but also those who don't have that type of capability, and just sending us a CSV file, and then we would upload and create the listings for them and get them successful on the site, help them with pricing, make sure they have the right descriptions. And so there was a lot of that hand-holding that we did through that period to help those smaller businesses and some medium businesses through that period to get up and running quickly and be successful. And then provide ongoing advice. There is a little bit of a nuance around how to be successful on marketplaces. And what we don't want to have, we do have them, but we don't want to rely on people having to go through FAQs. We want to make sure they have that personal touch and be able to speak to an account manager for advice of how to be more successful. So I think those are some of the things that we witnessed through that period, if that answers your question.
Well, it does. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, cool. So I think we changed the tone a little bit. I'm quite excited about this for you guys anyway, but you decided to set up your HQ in Bournemouth, which is now this growing tech hub, which is known as Silicon Beach. Can you tell us, I know. Can you tell us about the decision and what it meant for the culture, and maybe what it's meant for attracting talent for OnBuy? And obviously, you said earlier you went from 19 people to 120,
40,
something like that, very, very quickly.
Yeah, sure. So Kaz, who's I mentioned earlier, Kaz Payne, who's the CEO and the founder, had been a long-term on and off resident of Bournemouth. He spends his time between Manchester and Bournemouth, and he'd had previous businesses in this area. In fact, I think it was mainly around Poole, which is neighboured to Bournemouth. And so he'd had some successful businesses, and it was just around that sort of 2015, 16, that his next idea came, which was this sort of clear, true, transparent marketplace. But he already had a team of trusted individuals that he'd been working with through these other businesses that he'd had along the way. And so it made sense for him to continue sort of building out that business back in the day with the team that he had. And many of that team are still within the business working on the next evolution of where OnBuy is going to go. So the choice of Bournemouth was very much, Kaz had a team of that trusted team already in place. With regards to the talent, I don't think it really matters where you are. Attracting the right talent is tough at the moment, right? There's just so much competition.
It is tough.
Tough.
Yeah. Okay.
Tough.
Yeah.
Very tough, especially on the tech side. And so I don't think it would have really mattered too much if we'd have, been in London, Manchester, or Birmingham, or wherever we were. The reality is that you need to sort of move to more flexibility to enable your ability to attract the top talent wherever it is. And now we actually have a team which is spread from north to south, east to west in England, because having good people is key to the business. We don't have if you think of it, we're not selling anything, right? We have a product which is the tech, and so to have the best team possible to build out the right tech is key. So what it really led to was the importance of building a flexible environment, and that way we could have either people in the office, which I'm in the office now. I actually prefer it. I think it's a lot easier to interact with people. I find it a lot more productive. Some of the team is here. We have some who sort of are on a bit more of a flexible, where they work 2 or 3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days from home, and then where geography necessitates it, people who are completely work from home. For us, though, I think Bournemouth is, I don't want to say, it's a bit more laid back, because we're not a laid back business. Like we've got a lot on, and we're driving the business forward. But I think being somewhere like Bournemouth definitely helps with the ability to begin to sort of put the right environment in place that builds the right culture. And so having that flexibility begins, we can see the culture building off of the environment that we've created. So we're happy we're here in Bournemouth. And I think being in a metropolis is probably more problematic these days, whether it's the train strike or, the cost of living or I think very often it's probably more challenging to be in a city.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I think as an aside, I read that you just won best place to work in Bournemouth, didn't you? So your culture is obviously is doing well on it. I think we've probably only got time for one more question, I'm afraid. Okay. But I do want to ask you, I said something about it at the beginning. There's been a few mentions in the past year that you're on course to be one of the UK's next tech unicorns. Could you talk us through a little bit about the future of OnBuy, or with regards to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we've witnessed growth over the last 2.5 years, as we've talked about, and that growth fortuitously does not seem to be abating. Despite the headwinds in the market at the moment, I think that's subduing the whole of the UK economy. With the growth that we saw in 2021, and we're continuing to outgrow the market, which is important, right? So, if we look at the retail market, we're outgrowing that side of things. So despite the headwinds in the wider economy, we're still on track to continue to expand the business. Now, I think, the next unicorn, there might be a slight delay just because of the headwinds in the economy. But I think, we're still very much driven towards that goal. Whether it's to be called unicorn or just to be of that size and be that successful, whichever the key driver is. But we still have a ways to go. I think there's still a few challenges that we're working on. We need to, growing that fast, you're sort of, it's like, trying to let down your trousers. You just, you had that growth spurt of 2 inches, right? Well, do we go and buy some new trousers, or do we make the ones you've got fit? And so we still have some of those growing pains, and we're doing a lot of work with things, such as the tweaking the design to make sure that we remove any friction on the site wherever possible. We're working very much on the tone of voice and the OnBuy. Why OnBuy, right? What's the proposition? Why do I want to go to OnBuy? And that's something really important to us, because we really want to become that household name. Something where people say, yeah, that's fine, I'm going to go and look on OnBuy. And we're not quite there yet. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. But first, we've got to delight the customer when they come on. They have a great experience. They want to come back, no questions asked. And then, then that's when we know we've hit gold. And I think the really exciting thing, and the reason why we're so confident that we can become that unicorn, is we have so many levers yet to pull. Right. That we could just see that continued growth curve.
Brilliant. Well, that's brilliant. Well, look, we really look forward to seeing how you do grow. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And I'm sure there's people all over the world. If you're a retail brand in China or in Singapore, or perhaps even in India, and you want to tap into the UK market, well, you know where to turn. So thank you very much again, Mark.
Pleasure. Thank you for giving me the time.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I think it's time to go back to Gabby.
So thank you, Mark. That's it for today. Thank you all for joining. If you have any questions or want any introduction to our speakers, you can reach out to me, Gabriella at bemorlean.co. So it's Gabriella at bemorlean.co. Thanks again for stopping by, and see you next time.